And we're live. Good morning, everybody. This is just the preliminary testing of our facilities this morning. And we're just here in anticipation of our audience joining us on YouTube. So it's a good morning from us all at the Nottingham Festival of Science and Curiosity and colleagues from Quotient Sciences. And we've got a greeting from Mohammed. We're very grateful for your welcome, Mohammed. Glad to see that you're joining us. I'm just wondering, just to confer with my colleague Megan, whether we now need to switch off our phone link, Megan, or shall we leave it on?
Yes, we can switch off. I think we can go.
Okay, we'll go. It's not quite 10 o'clock, so I will just hang on for a minute or so. And I hope everyone is safe, well, and warm on this particular morning. When we have a blast or a beast, if you wish to call it that way, a beast from the east sweeping across the east of England, and our weather warning affecting us today. So I hope you're all keeping warm. It has just turned 10 now, as Mohammed is very keen to remind me. So good morning, everyone, and it's a very warm welcome to the Nottingham Festival of Science and Curiosity. This is our very first event in this year's festival. It is a question and answer session, and Ask the Scientist. And it's an opportunity for our viewers across the county to learn more about the range of careers that are available through STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. It's a very warm welcome to you, whether you are joining us as panelists or as audience on YouTube. And it's a special warm welcome to our school students who will be joining us as part of the Gedling Apprenticeship Week, Building Your Future. So a very warm welcome if you're from Gedling schools. We've been joined this morning by a team of scientists from Quotient Sciences, based in Ruddington in Nottingham. And in a moment, I will ask our colleagues to introduce themselves. My name is Rick Hall, and I work for Ignite, the charity that produces the Nottingham Festival of Science and Curiosity. And I'm joined on the tech side by Isabella Oakley. Give a wave, Isabella. Who will be looking after the technical side of this morning's broadcast. Just a little word about how this works. We are in a studio, a virtual studio, and we're being broadcast live on YouTube. So your questions and your comments are, we can see them if you will post them into the YouTube comments section. So without further ado, I'll just quickly go around the screen and invite our colleagues to introduce themselves, and then we'll start the presentations, and we look forward to a very lively session. So may I first of all start by introducing or inviting Yolanda to say hello.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Yolanda and I'm a project manager here at Quotient Sciences. Thanks for inviting me to do this talk. I'll be talking about the clinical and project management departments that we have here at Quotient.
Thanks, Yolanda. And over to Raman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Raman. I work for Quotient in the Client Services department. You'll hear a bit more about that later. But yeah, once again, thanks for inviting us all up here.
Thanks, Raman. Welcome. And Ian, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Again, thank you for inviting me to contribute to this session. So I'm Ian. I'm a principal formulation scientist within the pharmaceutical sciences part of Quotient here in Runnington. And I'll be giving you a little bit of an overview of what we actually do in a few minutes' time.
Thanks, Ian. You're very welcome. And finally, but not least, Peter, good morning to you.
Thanks, Rick. Good morning, everybody. I'm Peter Scholes. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer at Quotient. I won't be speaking today. I'll leave that to my colleagues. But just to say, we're really pleased and thrilled to be supporting the Science Festival again for the third year running. And I hope today helps get a week of activities off to a good start. Thank you, Rick.
And thank you, Peter. Yes, and we acknowledge Quotient Sciences' support for the festival. So what kinds of careers are available to us if we are interested in science? What's the range of activities and jobs that we might go into in the future? As part of the Building Your Future programme for Gedling and more widely across the county, young people are becoming more and more interested in science careers. The statistics are that more and more students are studying sciences at university and looking for careers. And of course, in our current situation, a lot of people are getting very interested in the science of medicine and medical discoveries and research. And so it's an incredibly fortunate and opportune moment to be talking to a range of scientists and people who work for Quotient Sciences. They will explain what their particular roles are. I think when I first met colleagues from Quotient, I was amazed at the range of different jobs that are available within medical sciences. What will happen is that our colleagues will make a short presentation in introducing their specific roles at Quotient. We invite your questions for the panelists, both as individuals to find out about their individual jobs, but also about the whole industry, the whole business of medical research and discovery. And it's really your opportunity to find out more, to find out what kind of jobs people are doing, but also what kind of job satisfaction they get from doing their jobs. So it's now my pleasure to hand over to Raman. I think you are leading us off with the presentation, both about Quotient and about your particular role.
Thanks very much, Rick. So I think we've got some slides that we want to share on the stream if possible, to get started. But I'll just carry on talking while you guys sort that out. But yeah, like I said, my name is Raman. I work for the client services team at Quotient, and yeah, we're just going to give a bit of a talk about what Quotient does, and then go through each of our roles and departments. So. Okay. Okay, so bear with me 1 second. I think there's a bit of a technical issue here. I think it's sharing the wrong screen. Sorry, 1 second.
Okay, Raman, do you wish to share them from your computer, or do you wish me to share them from mine?
I'm just sharing them now. So if you could just give it a go on popping them on the screen.
Okay, there you go.
There we go. Okay. Yep. So okay. So who is Quotient Sciences? We're, as Rick mentioned, we are in the drug development industry. We develop, test, and manufacture drug products. The goal is to get drugs to patients quicker than they currently are. We have several sites, both in the UK and the US, and we're growing rapidly. We've got over 900 staff at the moment. And we have several different departments. So pharmaceutical sciences, which Ian will cover, has multiple subcategories, but essentially encapsulates the drug development and manufacturing side. We've got the clinical trials in which we test the drugs. We've got the data sciences in which we analyze that data that comes out from those trials. And then we've got the regulatory. Obviously, all clinical trials are very strictly regulated, and we need to make sure we meet certain standards for those. And then we've got the commercial team, which I'm a part of, which helps to find customers and find opportunities. So the commercial team, what is the commercial team? So as Quotient, we are a company that does a service for pharmaceutical or biotech companies. So let's say company A has a molecule they want to turn into a drug. They would come to us. But in order to come to us, they need to know who we are, what we do, why they should get us to do it for them, and how to contact us. So the commercial team tries to achieve these goals. There are several departments in the commercial team. So there's finance, marketing, inside sales, business development, and client services. I'll go over a couple of these, but finance, as you can imagine, is kind of accountants doing all the projections, and then we've got marketing. So we've got marketing, which you may be surprised is, you have to have marketing people in a company like this. It's not directly a scientific role, but you do have to have a good scientific knowledge to be able to do scientific marketing. So you might organize events, organize webinars, design the website, which I've got a screenshot of here, do all the branding, so designing these slides, doing all the logo, email communications to the company and outside the company, and Google Analytics and case studies. So Google Analytics, so when you search on Google drug development, you want to see Quotient Sciences on that page. And if this is something that looks like it might be interesting to you, I think it would appeal to people who are creative, had good initiative, and then might be able to think of future strategy for getting your message out there. So we got business development and inside sales. So these words might not mean a lot to you, but hopefully I can explain them. Business development is are a team who essentially develop relationships with clients. So let's say we have a pharmaceutical company. We want them to come back to us to do work with us. We want them to contract us. So we will develop the relationship. We will pursue projects with them, and then we'll decide kind of the costing and the pricing side of what we do. So how much we're charging for what we're doing. And then we've got the inside sales, who a bit before the business development, they would approach potential customers and then essentially sell the product that we offer to them. For both of these roles, you have to be quite outgoing. You have to have good subject knowledge as well, so scientific knowledge, willing to talk to strangers. You just good at sales and talking, but in a scientific sense. And in business development, not at the moment, but generally you get to travel quite a bit. Okay, so client services, which is the team that I'm part of. We generate costings and proposals. So essentially, business development will have a client who wants to do a certain project, whether it be a clinical trial or drug manufacturing or drug development. They'll come to us saying, this is the program they want to do. We'll essentially say, okay, we'll put it into our model and figure out how much that would cost. We'll help with the pricing of that. We'll also do all the reporting of what we take every month. So essentially figuring out whether we're meeting our targets and all that. I really enjoy it because we get to talk to all the departments in the company. In order to generate a costing, we have to have an understanding of everything that goes on in the company, and to make sure it's accurate. So, like I say, you have to have an understanding. So, scientific knowledge is essential. And enjoying problem solving, because often we get kind of errors or things that people come to us with. Can you help me solve this problem? Yep. an eye for detail. And then in my team specifically, I've found recently there's been a lot of training that I've had to do of other people, and it's felt really rewarding for me. So me personally, my background is I did 3 A levels and 1 AS level, so biology, chemistry, music, and physics. I studied medicine at the University of Nottingham. Medicine wasn't quite being a doctor wasn't quite the direction I wanted to take. So I ventured into pharmaceutical sciences after graduating with a bachelor's in medical science. At university, I did a lot of a cappella singing, and I thought that gave me a lot of valuable skills. It kind of differentiated me amongst other people, gave me a lot of really, really valuable skills that I used in my interview. And then, yeah, this is my first full-time job at Quotient Sciences, really enjoying it, really enjoying developing my knowledge. Like I said, I get to work with all the departments, get to talk to everyone, and essentially, yeah, it's really great. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into the commercial side. I'm going to hand over now to Ian for his section.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. So yes, I'm Ian. I'm a formulation scientist within the Pharmaceutical Sciences group at Quotient, and I'm just going to run through a few of the things that we do in the next few minutes, and then a little bit about me to finish off. So if you give me the next slide, please, Rahman. Okay, so just to build a little bit on what Rahman mentioned earlier on, we're Quotient Sciences. We're based at Ruddington, just outside Nottingham. And we develop, test, and manufacture a range of medications for external clients. So all of our business, or nearly all of our business, is for external clients. We have development and manufacturing sites in Nottingham and Reading in the UK, and Philadelphia and Miami in the US. There are 3 main functions within pharmaceutical sciences. So development, which is the area that I work in, which is basically formulating and developing a product based on a client need. Analytical, which is testing the product, and then finally manufacturing, which actually manufactures the product at a larger scale, usually for use in clinical trials. And all of the functions within pharmaceutical sciences interact closely with each other. So in development, which is where I work, essentially we're turning drugs into medicines. We work on a wide range of dosage forms, for instance, tablets, capsules, liquid products, powders for reconstitution, and injections. A lot of the work that I get involved with is preparing work plans, preparing reports. I do get to talk to clients quite a lot, and I actually spend quite a lot of time in the lab making things, which is what I really enjoy doing, and is what I've been doing for a number of years now. So the next section of pharmaceutical sciences is analytical development. So this is testing of products to ensure that they're suitable for use and suitable to go into patients. There's many different methods of analysing products. Some of them are wet chemical. A lot of them these days are instrumental. So you put a solution on a machine and it gives you an answer at the bottom. We test to ensure the right quality of the products that we manufacture. And if you're interested in looking at analytical chemistry as a career, again, preparation of work plans is something that they do a lot of, preparation of reports, and there's an awful lot of interpretation of data required. Moving on to manufacturing. So this is actually making the product for dosing in the clinic. It tends to be scaling up for manufacture of the sort of small things that I've done in the lab. They have to follow very close and precise procedures. There's a very high standard of cleanliness and a high standard of paperwork within the manufacturing function. And the bottom point really is what we do at Quotient Sciences as a whole, which is make, test, and dose. And Yolanda will talk a little bit more about dosing in the clinic in a minute or two's time. So a little bit about me. I'm a scientist, a bit of a geeky scientist, I suspect. I did a degree in chemistry many years ago when dinosaurs still roamed the earth. And then I spent some time at Boots, 2 different parts of the Boots company, Boots Pharmaceuticals and then Boots Healthcare International in Nottingham. I had a spell at AstraZeneca in Loughborough. They're in the news a little bit at the moment because they're the producers of one of the COVID-19 vaccines. I then spent a few years at a company called Juniper Pharma, which is now part of the Catalent Empire. That's the other side of Nottingham. And then nearly 3 years ago, I joined Quotient Sciences here in Ruddington. So some of the skills which I feel that I've developed and learnt over the years, I have a basic scientific knowledge, obviously from my educational background. there's a lot of learning through experience in working in this industry. So you're encouraged to do things, make mistakes, and you learn through your mistakes sometimes. Quite a bit of creativity. We have to think our way around problem solving and all that sort of thing. And communication, as I mentioned, talking to clients, talking to external people. And those of you who are into gaming and are familiar with special skills required, I don't think there's anything very much in the way of special skills. I think it's just things that you learn through your education, and then things that you pick up throughout your career. So that's a quick bit about what I do and about me. So I'll hand over now to Yolanda to take you through the next part of the presentation.
Thanks, Ian. So hi everyone, I'm Yolanda and I'm a project manager here at Quotient. So very similar to Ian and Raman, I'm just going to talk through two of the different departments that we have here at Quotient, and hopefully give you a bit more insight into some of the other career paths that you can have within science. And then, I'll just give you a little bit of background about me and how I got to being a project manager. Okay, so the first department that I want to touch upon is our clinical department. So Raman touched upon it, but one of the things that we do here at Quotient is we run clinical trials. So all new medicines must be tested quite thoroughly before they get to the point of being prescribed in a chemist or sold. And we basically run clinical trials as part of that process. So you've probably heard clinical trials a lot in the news recently, but what we do here at Quotient are what is called phase 1 clinical trials. So these are quite early stage, and we generally use small numbers, and we're using healthy volunteers, whereas some of the phase 2 and phase 3 trials, which you might have heard about recently, they tend to be bigger numbers of people and they tend to be patients. So we have 110 employees in our clinical department, lots of different career paths within that. So we have doctors, we have nurses, there's clinical technicians, and just to give you an idea of what it actually looks like, so we have a clinical unit here in Nottingham. It very much looks like a hospital inside, so it's split into 6 wards. And in total there's 85 beds in there. So just to give you an idea of what a day in the life in clinic is like, both from the volunteers' perspective and from the clinical staff's perspective. So everything's kind of focused around dosing the volunteer with the test medicine, and then it's the clinical team's responsibility to kind of look after the volunteers, ensure their well-being, and performing tests on the volunteers from the point of dosing all the way up until they're discharged from the unit. So if you're part of the clinical team, some of the things that you get trained in and some of the tests that you'll be doing is we take a lot of blood samples, we take volunteers' blood pressure, we do a lot of heart monitoring using ECGs, and we also quite often take people's temperatures as well. So that was clinic. I'm now going to talk about project management. So that's where I'm currently working. So I'm a project manager. I didn't know what a project manager did until about 2 years ago, so you'll be forgiven if you also don't know. So what do we do as project managers? So generally, we're kind of responsible for the day-to-day management of the clinical trials and the projects which are run here at Quotient. As Raman mentioned earlier, so we aren't doing the clinical trial. Just try and get the light to turn back on.
Well, don't worry, Yolanda. We can still see you.
Can you still hear me okay?
I think we're suffering power cuts because of the weather, but yeah, we can still see you and the slides are up. Keep going.
Okay. So yeah, as Raman mentioned, we aren't doing the clinical trials for ourselves. We're basically doing it on behalf of another company who own the medicine, if you like. So as project manager, we act as the point of contact with that other company. So there's a lot of client-facing communication involved. As you can imagine, a clinical trial is quite heavily regulated. So in some cases, we're given medicines which have never been given to humans before and were given them to humans for the very first time. So there's a lot of study documents involved with that. So in project management, we just help generate and review those study documents and just make sure that everything's in place to go as smoothly as possible with the trial. So I've just got some skills here on the bottom, which I think you would develop in project management, or if you had these skills, it might be something that you'd like to consider. So lots of customer service skills. As I said, you're customer facing. Time management, it's really key that we try and keep all of our clinical trials running to time. And it helps as well if you're a highly organised person. Okay, so just very quickly, a little bit about me. So I did a biochemistry degree at the University of Leeds. And then in between second and third year, I did what's called an industrial placement. So these are fairly common in science degrees, and it basically you take a year out between year 2 and year 3 at university, and you go get some experience. I spent my year with a pharmaceutical company called Eli Lilly, researching Alzheimer's disease. So I was kind of a scientist in a lab at that point. I then went on to do a PhD in neuroscience at the University of Sheffield. That was, again, neuroscience focused, scientist in a lab researching motor neuron disease. Then spent a little bit of time in South Korea where I was writing up the results for my PhD. Then decided that I didn't want to be the scientist at the bench anymore. So I then got a job as an account manager, which is basically sales, which was really fun. Basically got to travel around the UK, some of Northern Europe, meeting other scientists and finding out all about their research. And then I joined Quotient in the project management department about 1.5 years ago now. But that's me, and I think that's the end of our talks. So I'll hand back to Rick and hopefully we can answer some of your questions.
You're on mute, Rick.
I know it's one of those hazards of getting, you never get used to it, even though we do Zoom all the time. Well, thank you, Yolanda, Raman and Ian for that for those presentations. It's great to hear your different experiences. And so we have got time, we've about 20 minutes in total for any questions that may be coming in from our viewers. We have the first one from Nigel, who is very interested in knowing more about clinical trials. So, Yolanda, I might start this question for you, please. Nigel wants to know, how many clinical trials do you run at any one time? And roughly how many do you run in a year, for example?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Honestly, I don't have an exact number off the top of my head. It really varies. A lot of it is dependent. So in clinic, we have 85 beds. So we can have 85 volunteers in at any one time. And a clinical trial, it can last anywhere from a couple of days up to a month sometimes. So it really depends on the length of the trial, how many volunteers are taking part in that trial. But as is general, we're responsible for a lot of trials in the UK. I think Quotient are responsible for about 1/4 of all phase 1 trials in the UK. So it's a good amount.
And it's my understanding that actually volunteers get some expenses for taking part in trials with Quotient. Is that correct?
Yeah, so they are paid clinical trials, so the volunteers do get paid. It's an inconvenience allowance, so basically volunteers get paid based on the amount of time that they come spend with us. So if a volunteer takes part in a trial that lasts 2 weeks, they'll obviously be paid more than a volunteer who takes part in a trial that lasts 1 week, because there's more inconvenience associated with that.
Yes. I mean, again, my understanding is that you get quite a lot of kind of university students signing up for trials to cover some of their expenses, perhaps over the summer holiday. But when people are doing clinical trials, there's some parts that they can still carry on with other work, can't they? With their, you know, kind of an office worker or a student, they can carry on with their studies during some clinical trials.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're more than welcome. The volunteers, they bring in their laptops, they bring in their mobiles. They're very often sat on their beds in clinic, working away, taking work calls. And there's some days which are more intense in terms of assessments. It's usually on the day that they've been dosed. But after about 24 hours of being dosed, some days can be quite quiet. So yeah, a lot of volunteers bring their work in and get that done. If they don't have any work, we have pool tables, table tennis, we have sports subscriptions, so there's a lot of entertainment on the wards as well.
Well, let's hope that this broadcast actually increases interest from our potential volunteers. Well, while we're waiting for some more questions to come in, just to encourage people who are viewing to put your questions either into the chat function of YouTube, or if you've got a Twitter account, you can post them to us at info@notfosac.co.uk, and we can get them to the panelists that way. I've got a question for all of you, in fact, panel, if we could quickly go round, because one of the things that young people, you know, really are concerned about when they're looking at future careers is, you know, what level of job satisfaction, what brings you job satisfaction? So, Raman, could I start with you and ask, you know, what gives you job satisfaction sort of day to day?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say my role at the moment is pretty challenging. It can be it's deadline driven, and there are a lot of problem solving. There's a lot of problem solving, as I mentioned before. So what I get a real kick out of almost is solving other people's problems, getting a project done when against all odds, essentially. And so someone asks something, or it might not be possible, but then I get it done in time. So kind of exceeding people's expectations, and doing that kind of thing. But I mean, I do work a lot with Excel as well. So when I solve a little problem in Excel, fix a formula, fix an error, that's a really nice feeling as well. So,
Ian, what about you? What brings you day-to-day job satisfaction?
I think like Raman, problem solving, because I'm technical based. You quite often have a lot of technical issues when you're developing products. I keep saying to people that if it was easy, then clients wouldn't want us to do it; they'd do it themselves. So quite often we do have challenging things to overcome. So yeah, problem solving. I think working in the pharmaceutical industry, obviously you're developing things which hopefully are going to improve people's health. So I think the thing that I do get the biggest kick out of is seeing things that I've worked on progress, whether that's to later stage clinical trials or even sometimes make it to the marketplace. Unfortunately, I've been lucky enough to work onto one or two things that have actually made it into the marketplace. I guess it's the realization that what you're doing is actually benefiting people's health, but seeing things progress from the sort of small beginnings that we have here into something much bigger is something that gives me a lot of motivation. Yeah.
Well, there is a lot of interest, isn't there, in the whole process of clinical trials in this current crisis. I think we might describe it that yes, there's a great emphasis on, you know, finding solutions to very big problems. Yolanda, what brings you job satisfaction?
So I think the thing I'd probably say what I love most about my job is that no 2 days are the same. Generally, if you're working on a couple of different trials at any one time, all the trials are different. You come in one day, you're working on one thing, you come the next day and it's something completely different. So you don't have that repetitiveness of 9 till 5, just doing the same thing every day. So you never get bored, shall I say.
So it's the variety of jobs and tasks that you encounter.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of different things to be doing, lots of different studies, lots of different people that you're speaking to on a daily basis.
I think it must be quite a quick, fast-moving industry to be part of, I would suggest. I suppose, again, one of the anxieties that young people have is that they'll go into jobs where it's very repetitive and they're doing the same thing, month after month. And actually, I think the last year has shown us that actually developing new medicines, new therapies is a very fast-moving, or could be a very fast-moving industry to get into. Raman, would you agree with that? That there's kind of very fast pace of research and development?
Yeah, I would say especially at Quotient, given our primary goal is to kind of accelerate drug development, make everything quicker, make it from going from a molecule all the way to a treatment for patients as quick as possible. I experienced that in my job role specifically as well, because I see all the potential projects that are going to come in. So even ones that we might not work on, but some that we could work on. And there are so many constantly going in and going through the process.
Yeah, thanks. Just a reminder for viewers to post your questions in the chat function on YouTube. Keep them coming. I've got a follow-up to Nigel's question about how many trials Quotient run a year. Peter has added that you run about between 40 and 50 different clinical trials in a year. So that's strikes me as being a lot of tests and clinical trials. One of the other questions that I know a lot of young people have is when you ask a young person, oh, what do you want to do when you go into a career, or what do you want to study? They're reluctant sometimes to actually pin it down to a specific job. And actually what they want to do is keep their options open as long as possible. What advice would you three have for young people, perhaps when they are choosing subjects to study for GCSE and for A-level, so that they can keep their options open for as long as possible when it comes to higher education and possible careers? Ian, could I start with you about what advice you might have for young people about their options and choices?
I think it's probably important not to make a decision too early as to the career that you wish to go into. I know some people have a very strong idea at quite a young age of what they want to get into. I didn't particularly. So what I did at school was I kept my options as broad as I possibly could. So as well as doing sciences, which is where I've ended up, I also studied 2 languages and history and things like that. So it wasn't until I was sort of going into A-levels and then beyond that I decided that I wanted to follow a scientific route. So I would suggest, if you've got an idea that there's something specific that you want to go into and do, then by all means do the research into that and find out what you need to do. But maybe you don't need to make that decision too early. And even when you're well into your career, if you decide that it's not quite what you thought it was going to be, there are still plenty of opportunities to move into other areas, even with the qualifications you have got. So I think the advice that I would give is, don't fix anything too early, because there are always alternative things to do. Even when you've got the qualifications that you've got, you don't have to be tied into just doing science, as you will see from some of the roles that there are at Quotient. Raman, for instance, is much more into the commercial side of things. So I think keep your options open for as long as you can is probably the advice that I'd give.
Thanks, Ian. Well, Raman, let's turn to you, because you thought that you were going to head towards a medical career. Again, advice about keeping options open, but then what prompted you to change course, perhaps?
Yeah, I'd say I'm like a prime example of what Ian was saying, in that you've always got other options if things aren't working out, or you don't feel like this is the right career. So when I was choosing my A levels, I tried to keep it as open as possible. So I did biology, chemistry, physics at AS, and music as well, because that helped me as like a creative outlet. I think if you're applying to university or whatever, I think universities can like having a fourth option that is a bit more creative. But yeah, I think it was I started reflecting after essentially 3.5 years of doing a degree, which is quite far in out of a 5-year degree, and I decided, maybe I just want to pursue other options. I started looking into other options. I started looking into what other kind of careers I could do with my existing degree, because my degree was structured so that I would end up with 2 degrees. And yeah, I started looking into other options. I thought, well, there's such a breadth of opportunity. I was surprised by looking at companies like Quotient. Like I said, in the commercial team, there's project management. There's so many different avenues to take that the advice that Ian said, I completely echo, is don't fixate too much on one thing. So when I was in A levels and GCSEs, I was thinking, I want to do medicine the whole time. And then you see how that changed a few years on, so.
Thanks, Raman. Yolanda, anything you would like to add about keeping options open?
No, just what the guys have said, really. Yeah, I think it's always good to have just almost kind of follow what you enjoy, do what you enjoy, and hopefully that'll kind of lead you on the right path. And also, it's okay to not know what you want to do. So I think just if there's certain subjects or hobbies that you enjoy, I think by just following those, and hopefully that will kind of lead you to where you eventually will want to be.
Thanks for that. I mean, I'm always keen to emphasize that, your qualifications are not the whole of your personality. And I'm always interested in what I sometimes call people's hidden talents, the things that you may not necessarily reveal to your work colleagues. But, we know that Raman is a highly skilled a cappella singer, and therefore is a very rounded personality as a result. Yolanda, what's your hidden talent?
Oh, I don't think I have one. So I'm going to fall back on science as being my hidden talent. Have a bit of RNA biologist training in me, so coming back to the COVID situation that we're currently in, if needed, I could probably do the COVID PCR tests if needed.
And we've just had a question in. We'd like to hear a little bit more about your experience in South Korea. What did you learn from that time in South Korea?
Oh, South Korea was amazing. So that basically came about. So if you don't know, a PhD, it was a research project. So it was 3 years in a lab, and then at the end of that, you have to write your thesis, which is not a small document by any means. So I didn't quite want to go into a full-time job and write that at the same time. Luckily, I had a friend who was working in Korea, so I went out to stay with them and kind of split my time between writing my PhD and living in Korea. But it was amazing. I loved the culture, loved the people, loved the food. And I hadn't really done any traveling at that point. So that's probably one of my regrets career-wise, is a lot of people often take gap years before university or after university. So that was kind of my opportunity to go see the world a little bit.
That's a great extra comment, Yolanda. Thank you for that. Yes, to viewers, and young people, I would say, yes, look, broaden your experience as much as you can. Clearly, there are travel restrictions at the moment, but gap years and time out are very, very useful, I think. Ian, you're not going to escape the question about what's your hidden talent.
I didn't think I would somehow, Rick. Funnily enough, it's not dissimilar to Raman's, actually. I do a little bit of folk singing at a folk club. And actually, talking about a cappella, I did sing a cappella with Raman and a few other people at the Quotient Christmas party a couple of years ago.
That's
So,
great to hear.
that is my my sort of creative side outside of work, being allowed to get out, I suppose.
Well, of course, you know, traditional singing and sea shanties are all the rage at the moment. Just as we're coming towards the end of the session, folks, of course, the questions are coming in. There was a question about, are there any specific kind of drugs or trials that you're able to reveal that you're working on at the moment, or any particular trials that stand out for any of you? Yolanda, I think I'll come to you again first as a project manager.
Yes, I mean, we are always working on interesting trials, but we probably can't share any specifics of any specific drug or companies that we're working with, just the nature of the business. But yeah, lots of variety, drugs for indications for lots of different diseases, some common diseases, some rare diseases. So hopefully some of those will get to market, and then I'd be able to say a little bit more about it.
And that you played your part, and that Quotient played their part in solving some of these challenges that we're all facing in our lives, in our health, in our healthy lives. Colleagues, thank you so much for being part of our first Q&A session this morning. Just a reminder to viewers that if you are interested in knowing more about clinical trials, we have an event on Wednesday this week coming up at 5:30. It's another conversation about what does the research say about clinical trials. So if you're interested, do look that up on the website at notsfosac.co.uk. But for now, I'd like to thank our colleagues from Quotient Sciences, Yolanda, Raman, and Ian, and to all the viewers watching. Thank you for joining us. There's a session every morning this week at 10 o'clock about Asking the Scientist. So if you're interested, do tune in again. And thank you again for this morning. That's where we'll leave it. Have a good day. All the best.